In this video, traders, I want to talk about building good trading habits that actually stick. Stay tuned. Hey guys, warm welcome to you. Thanks so much for joining me. Okay, so building good trading habits. You'll probably click this video because you're like, hey, I've got a few bad habits. They're not really serving me. I know that they aren't going to help me get to where I want to go. And in fact, where I am headed, that trade does not act in that manner. So you've probably picked up a load of bad habits from the start of your trading career, from life and all this type of stuff, because very often we take ourselves out of the real world into the trading world and it's completely different. We have to like to lose money. We have to appreciate it. We have to be comfortable with it. We have to be very comfortable with discomfort. We have to be comfortable with this and out of control. And all these type of things that are very unusual and things that serve us in the real world, so to speak, don't serve us in the trading world. And so this is kind of this yin and yang that we have to think about. And very often maybe you've done some bad habits, you've got away with it in your trading career so far, but you know that you're just a ticking time bomb. So how do we create good trading habits that actually stick? So definitely recommend a book. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And one of the things that he says in there is you can't, and this is kind of a study that he's taken from elsewhere and kind of repeating, so this is not a kind of new thing, it's something that he just puts very, very well in the book, and definitely go and check it out. But one of the things he says, and resonated with me, is, habits can't be broken, but they can be replaced. And so that really makes you think, right? Because if you're trying hard to not do something in trading and it's become a habit, it might be almost impossible for you to stop doing that. And an easier way to look at it is to replace it with something good. And so let's think of a scenario. The scenario you have is you come to the screen, you scan the market, you see something, you automatically have a bias based on what you've seen, and then you go set about trying to find evidence, should I say, to back up that theory. And then you take a trade and you start to build this thing, go, hey, I think that's a long, yeah, because of this, yeah, because of that, yeah, because, and then you think, I'm not going to miss it, I need to get in. And of course, it might not even been along the first place, you're not very structured with your entry, risk rewards all skewed up, it's just a mess of a trade. But that's a kind of, this is an argument's sake, an example for argument's sake. But the habit you've got there is, you've seen something, you've seen the chart, you've created an initial bias, and then you've tried to reinforce that bias with evidence, and then the further habit is that you just feel so excited about it and think it's such a great trade, and you take it without thinking about things. And so how would you stop doing that? Well, the kind of trader who says, well, I'm just going to not do that. I'm just going to make sure that I'm just not going into a trade unless it's structured and all this type of stuff. But maybe it requires a little bit more thought, a little bit more care about this. And perhaps this is why a lot of people struggle so much and just kind of fall by the wayside with this game. When you go into that, you say, okay, I've got a habit of seeing a chart and I kind of have an impulsive idea of where it's going to go, and I reinforce that. Okay, why not replace the habit of me looking for things to reinforce the idea with looking for things that go against the idea, and say, well, actually, we are quite high, we've done this, we've done that, so that you just put the brakes on things. Not to say you're not going to pull the trigger on it, but you just pull the brakes. You replace the habit of saying, well, yeah, it is a long because we've got this momentum and this indicator's reading this and that and the other. You say, well, it's not a long because of this, and that just tempers you. Now, you don't want to do it so much extremely not trading, of course, and you've got this kind of, oh, I don't know what to do type of thing, but all you're doing is replacing it with more of a considered argument. And then the next habit is, well, once I've got my idea, I have to place a trade immediately. I have this habit of wanting to do that. That habit might be, okay, well, instead of click, 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 putting the order in, click, 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 quantity, and then hitting the market, it could be hitting a limit under the market. So your habit then becomes just put a limit in. So you don't remove the habit of execution, because that's hardwired, right? And if you go by anything that's said about this study, is that you can't just stop that, or it's very, very hard to just stop that. But if you replaced it with click market order to click limit order well under the market, it gives you time to think and consider where's the best place for trading. You can drag that limit order up and down as you see fit. It just puts the brakes on things. And so you can have this with anything. If your habit is that Here's a bad one that catches a lot of people out. After a losing trade, you have the impulse and habit to go straight back into a trade to get your money back. You have that revenge trade thing. And maybe you don't class it as that, but it is that. And let's say that's the sort of thing you do after maybe a couple of losing trades or one losing trade, whatever it is. The habit is this. If that's a habit and hardwired, rather than having a rules, I will not do this, I'm trying to strictly force it and brute force it, replace it with something else and say, okay, well, my habit is that actually, after I've had a couple of losing trades, I look for another trade very quickly and I try to get back in. Again, replace it with something different. That could be, hey, I'm going to, after a couple of losing trades, instead of doing this, I'm going to replace it with something completely different. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's opening up and listening to a podcast. Maybe it's something, it can be anything. It's just hardwiring that thing that when you see this, you then replace it with that. And once you start to do the positive action rather than negative action, that then becomes a habit. That then becomes a thing that's hardwired. So what you're doing is making that subtle shift and saying, right, that's the negative action I want to change. That's the negative habit I want to change. Rather than just saying, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to replace it with something else. I'm going to replace it with something perhaps similar to start off with, so say limit order instead of a market order, because that's still the same action, right? You're opening the broker platform, you're opening a ticket, you put your quantity in, you're clicking a button, you're just, instead of having a market order, you're just dropping it down into a limit and changing. So you're just adding a few little things. And so the hard wire section is still really reasonably solid. And then over time you can say, well, actually, I'm not going to open a ticket. And over time you might want to get it to, actually, the habit I want is after 3 losing trades, I want to go for a walk around the block, or I want to do a bit of exercise, or I want to kind of shut the machine down. And then you build that habit. And so you slowly divert the path, the neural pathway in your mind from that hardwired habit to, okay, I just want to slowly move it to where I want to be. That tends to be far more effective than just trying to chop it off and trying to force yourself to not do something. It is studies, didn't they, with smokers and drinkers and people who have habits they want to kick in the real world, and replacing those habits with something. It's like they came out with that thing that like a nicotine pen, right? And in fact, actually, you could argue that vaping is okay. There's an argument about the health benefit to it, but the health impacts of either. But put that to one side for now. The habit of someone opening a cigarette packet, putting a cigarette in their mouth, lighting it, instead of doing it for years and years and years, decades, some guys and girls, it's hard to break. And so the kind of vaping thing came along, which was right, the process of the urge, they feel the urge, and rather than opening that packet of cigarettes and lighting it, they're doing something else. Now, I'm not entirely sure that is the best thing to be doing, but that shifted a lot of people quite easily, smokers, over to something different. They had those pens that were nicotine pens. They've done stuff, and the same type of thing is that it's the habit of the urge. Someone's got the urge to smoke. Instead of smoking, they go, right, I'm going to do this same kind of action, get this thing out, put it to my mouth and do this. And it shifted a massive amount of people over to vaping, and then hopefully some people then stop altogether and kind of quit that if that's the way they want to go. But the point with Dow trading is that it's a habit that's hardwired, and rather than saying stop, which is, of course, is possible, it's tough. It's very tough. And actually, I think James Clear says it is impossible neurologically to do that. And maybe we are just replacing it with something else. And so with trading, also take away, hey, don't try and just stop something. Just try and replace it. Identify the habit you want to change. Identify a close replacement, I think, is the way to go. So it's very, very similar. It doesn't have the same negative impact like the limit order as opposed to the market order. Run with that for a bit and just see if that becomes your habit. Because if that becomes your habit, you've eliminated a lot of damage. And if you want to change that further and further into something more positive, easily do it. Step by step, slowly does it. Take care. See you next one. Keep your risk managed. Check out that Atomic Habits book. Bye-bye.